Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. I still remember the warmth of his hand, now cold beneath the hospital sheets. I never thought I'd stand there, alone, watching the man I once promised forever to take his last breath while our son, our only child, stood frozen by the door, eyes wide, lips trembling with questions he wasn't ready to ask. My name is Claire. For 22 years, I called myself his wife, John's wife. To the outside world, we were a picture-perfect family, 2 high-paying jobs, a neat suburban house, polite smiles at church, and a wedding ring that never left my finger. But under our crisp bedsheets lay a loneliness I buried so deep that not even John noticed. Or maybe he did, and just chose to ignore it, like I ignored his late-night calls that stopped when I entered the room, or the scent of a stranger's perfume clinging to his collar. But grief has a way of making secrets louder. And that night, our son, Evan, asked me something I still can't repeat without my throat tightening. He was just 20, yet the weight in his voice felt older than both of us. We buried John on a rainy Thursday. Neighbors whispered condolences I didn't need. Inside my chest, guilt twisted with an unexpected relief. No more pretending. No more cold side of the bed. But freedom is never free, is it? After the last guest left, Evan found me in the kitchen, scrubbing an already clean plate just to stop my hands from shaking. He didn't look like a boy anymore, his father's jawline, my restless eyes. He stood there silently, letting the drip of the faucet fill the distance between us. "Mom," he said, voice cracking but steady enough to slice through my exhaustion. "There's something I need to ask you. But promise you won't hate me." My breath caught. I thought he knew. I thought he'd accuse me of the secrets I hid beneath hotel sheets when John worked late. But nothing could have prepared me for what he really wanted. Outside, the wind rattled the kitchen window. A photo of our family, taken on a vacation we pretended to enjoy, stared back at me from the fridge door. How many times had I lied for that smile? "Evan, what is it?" I whispered, my fingers numb against the cold porcelain. He stepped closer, eyes flicking to my wedding ring still clinging to my finger like a promise I couldn't break. Then he told me. His words hit harder than the funeral eulogy. And just like that, everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and motherhood cracked wide open. If I could turn back time, I'd do so much differently. But tonight, I stand at the edge of a choice I never imagined I'd have to make. What would you do if your own son begged you to betray the memory of the man you both lost? Stay with me. Because this is only the beginning. Evan's confession lingered in the kitchen air like a ghost I couldn't banish. He didn't yell. He didn't cry. He just stood there, watching me with those eyes, so much like his father's, yet searching for something John never did, the truth. "Mom, I know you're lonely." "I was never blind," he said, voice low but steady. "Dad was. He wasn't who you needed him to be, was he?" I gripped the counter's edge to keep my knees from buckling. For a moment, it wasn't grief that suffocated me, it was the terrifying relief of being seen. Really seen. Not as a mother, not as a widow, but as a woman who'd hungered for warmth she never truly found in her marriage. "Evan, you don't understand." I tried to find words that didn't sound sinful or pathetic, but they caught behind my teeth like splinters. He stepped closer, the scent of his cologne brushing against my skin. For a heartbeat, I thought I'd tell him everything, the nights in cheap motels, the taste of another man's laughter on my lips, the shame that kept me crawling back to John's cold bed because leaving felt more frightening than staying. But instead, I whispered, "Your father loved you. He did what he thought was best." A bitter smile ghosted across Evan's mouth. "Did he ever do what was best for you?" Silence. He knew the answer. I didn't need to say it. I turned away, pressing my palm to the kitchen window, feeling the chill bleed into my bones. My reflection stared back, tired eyes, fading beauty, a woman trapped between guilt and an ache she no longer wanted to deny. Behind me, I heard his footsteps. Felt his breath near my neck. He wasn't touching me, yet every inch of my skin burned as if he was. The terrible truth? A small, broken piece of me didn't push him away. "Tell me what you need, Mom," he murmured, voice raw, trembling. "Let me help you feel alive again." Tears spilled freely now, blurring the storm outside. Somewhere in this house, my wedding ring clinked softly on the counter where I'd finally set it down. How did we get here? A mother and son, two lonely souls orbiting a secret so dangerous, so forbidden, yet so desperately human. In that fragile pause, a single thought pulsed through me: this isn't over. And neither of us was ready to let go. The days after John's funeral bled into one another like ink on wet paper, quiet, messy, impossible to separate. Neighbors dropped off casseroles we didn't eat. The pastor visited once, offering polite condolences before quickly excusing himself when the air in our living room felt too heavy with something unholy. Evan and I barely spoke of it, his request, that tremor of forbidden closeness in the kitchen. But it lingered between us like the ghost of my marriage. Every time he brushed past me in the hallway, I felt it, the warmth I used to crave from John, now flickering where it shouldn't. Late one night, I caught myself standing in Evan's doorway, watching him sleep. His chest rose and fell under the thin blanket, his face softened by the innocence of dreams. He looked so much like his father did when we first fell in love, before the betrayals, before the years turned John's tenderness into distant obligation. I told myself I was only making sure he was okay. That a mother checks on her son when grief cracks him open in the dark. But when Evan stirred, blinking sleep from his eyes, I didn't step back fast enough. "Mom?" His voice was groggy, but warm. Inviting. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I didn't mean to wake you." He sat up, the blanket slipping from his bare shoulders. For a heartbeat, my eyes lingered too long. The part of me that still remembered desire shivered in protest, yet didn't look away. "Come here." "You look cold," he said, patting the edge of his bed like he used to when he was 10 and scared of thunderstorms. I almost did. God forgive me, I almost let myself crawl into that warmth I'd missed for years, just to feel something other than loss and regret. But my hands clenched into fists, nails biting into my palms. "No. I should go." My voice cracked like thin glass. Before I could turn, he reached for my hand. His touch was gentle but grounding, a reminder of everything we were and everything we shouldn't be. "Why did you stay with him, Mom? If you were so lonely?" I sank onto the edge of the bed, unable to meet his eyes. In the dark, truths feel softer, like confessions to the night instead of each other. Because leaving felt selfish. Because I thought love meant enduring disappointment. Because I was scared of who I'd be without him. Evan's thumb brushed my knuckles, lingering there a moment too long. "You're not selfish. You're just human." Outside, a branch scraped against the windowpane like fingernails. The sound made me shiver, or maybe it was his nearness. I pulled my hand away, but not before my fingers grazed his wrist, his pulse steady, warm, alive. For a fleeting second, I remembered how it felt to have a man's heartbeat race just for me. Somewhere down the hall, John's wedding portrait still hung crooked on the wall, the glass cracked from when Evan slammed the door days ago. I hadn't fixed it. Maybe I didn't want to. Lately, I caught our neighbor, Mrs. Klein, peering through her curtains whenever Evan came home late. She'd seen the way he lingered by my car in the driveway, how his hand brushed my shoulder too tenderly for a grieving son. Small-town eyes notice everything, but they never truly see. I knew this couldn't go on. Yet every night, when the house fell silent, I'd listen for Evan's footsteps in the hallway, terrified and desperate for the door to my room to open. If this was love, it was a kind meant to ruin us both. And somehow, I wasn't ready to let it die. The rain returned on a Thursday night, just like the day we buried John. Thunder rolled softly in the distance, echoing through our quiet house like a heartbeat that wouldn't settle. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the floor where my wedding ring now lay, forgotten, irrelevant, a circle of promises broken long before the grave claimed him. I should have been asleep. But sleep was impossible lately. Dreams turned to memories, memories turned to guilt, and guilt always brought me back to Evan. I heard his knock before he even touched the door. One soft tap. Hesitation in the shape of a boy who had become a man too fast, carrying secrets his father left behind and feelings I should have buried with my vows. "Come in," I said before I could stop myself. Evan stood there, damp from the rain, hair clinging to his forehead, eyes impossibly gentle for all the weight they carried. He didn't speak. He just crossed the room, knelt by my legs, and took my cold hands in his warm ones. "Mom," he whispered, like a prayer and a plea all at once. "I can't stand seeing you like this. You're here but, you're somewhere else. Let me bring you back." I wanted to protest, wanted to remind him I was his mother, that this was wrong, that love shouldn't blur lines like this. But the words died in my throat because the truth was more brutal than sin. I didn't want him to stop. I lifted my trembling hand and brushed his wet hair from his eyes. He closed them at my touch, breath hitching the way a man's does when he aches for more than just comfort. Outside, lightning flashed, casting our shadows on the wall, two figures hunched together, silhouettes of longing that no storm could wash clean. "Evan," I murmured, my voice breaking, "this isn't who we are." But my other hand betrayed me, curling around his neck, feeling the warmth I'd been denied for so long. "Yes, it is," he said, voice ragged against my skin. "We're all we have now." The truth lodged itself in my chest like a splinter. Maybe we were. Maybe grief and desire were the same thing dressed in different clothes. And maybe tonight, we were too far gone to pretend otherwise. In the hush before thunder broke again, he pressed his forehead to mine. Neither of us dared to move. Neither of us dared to stop. His breath ghosted over my cheek, warm and shaky, tethering me to a moment that shouldn't exist. My fingers trembled at the back of his neck. I could hear my pulse louder than the thunder outside. Then, like a door slammed by fate, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. We both flinched, forehead to forehead, our shared warmth evaporating into shame and something more dangerous, regret tangled with want. I reached for the phone with a hand that didn't feel like mine. A single message blinked on the cracked screen, a name I hadn't seen in over a year. "Daniel. Daniel, I heard about John. I'm in town. Can we talk?" Evan's eyes tracked the glow of my phone, then locked on mine. All the questions he never dared ask bloomed in that silence. Daniel, my secret. The man whose hotel sheets knew my loneliness when John's bed went cold. The man I once promised I'd never see again. "Who's Daniel?" Evan's voice was soft but cut deeper than a scream. I swallowed, my mouth dry. "He's no one. He shouldn't have messaged." A lie, thin as paper. Evan saw right through it. He pulled back, breaking our closeness, his hands falling from mine. The warmth vanished, leaving a cold rawness I hadn't felt since John's funeral. "How long, Mom?" His tone cracked like ice under too much weight. Was he before Dad died? Was he, while Dad was still? I wanted to lie. God knows I did. But after everything we'd almost done, were still doing, truth seemed the least I owed him. "Yes," I whispered. "It was before. But it ended. I swear." Evan let out a bitter laugh, rubbing his hands over his face. His grief tangled now with betrayal so sharp I felt it like a blade under my ribs. "You gave him what you wouldn't give Dad," he said, voice trembling between rage and heartbreak. "And now you'd give it to me just to feel wanted again?" I flinched. Tears threatened, but anger flickered too, a spark of defiance for all the years I'd been everyone's dutiful wife, never anyone's woman. It wasn't like that, Evan, I said, standing so fast the bed creaked. Daniel was, he made me feel alive when your father made me feel invisible. And you, my voice faltered. You shouldn't have to carry that emptiness for me. He stood too, so close I could feel the hurt radiating off him like heat. Then why didn't you let him in tonight instead of me? Why not call him if he's what you need? Before I could answer, the doorbell rang. We both froze. A shadow crossed the frosted glass by the front door, tall, male, familiar. The rain framed him like a ghost at my doorstep. Daniel. He hadn't waited for permission. He'd come to remind me that my secrets don't stay buried, no matter how many rings I take off or how many lines I cross. Behind me, Evan's breath caught. I didn't need to turn to know he was burning with the same mix of rage and reckless longing. Outside, thunder rolled again, louder this time. Inside, the storm had only just begun. Daniel's shadow lingered at the front door, framed by flashes of lightning that turned the rain into a curtain I wished I could hide behind. My heart pounded so violently I pressed a hand to my chest, as if to calm the storm raging inside me. Evan stepped closer, blocking my view of Daniel, forcing me to face him instead. His eyes, so raw, so hurt, searched mine for an answer I didn't know how to give. You want him here? Evan asked, voice breaking in the middle like a boy lost inside a man's fury. After everything I shook my head. I don't know what I want, Evan. I just know I'm tired of feeling half alive. The doorbell rang again, insistent, like Daniel knew every heartbeat in this house. Evan's hands closed around my arms, strong but trembling. I don't care about him, Evan said, words fierce and hushed. I don't care about Dad anymore either. I care about you. If you open that door, he'll take you away from me. I know it. A sob tore from my throat. I hated how right he was. Because for all the sins I'd committed in shadows and silence, nothing had ever felt as real as this terrible, tender bond with the boy I'd raised, now a man, wanting to be the one thing his father never was for me. I pulled him into me, my forehead pressed to his, our tears mingling on our skin. Outside, Daniel's knocking turned desperate. Go, I whispered, my voice ragged but sure. Go answer it. Tell him I'm done hiding. Tell him I don't belong to him, or anyone else. Evan froze, then his mouth ghosted near my ear. And me? I swallowed the guilt, the fear, the desire that made me a sinner and a woman all at once. You're part of me. You always were. But after tonight, we have to let this die before it destroys us both. He pulled back, eyes shining with something like heartbreak and relief stitched together. Then, slowly, he kissed my forehead, gentle, final, sacred. I watched him walk down the hallway, shoulders squared, jaw set like his father's used to be when facing something he couldn't fix. The door swung open. Rain and thunder roared inside. And over it all, I heard Evan say, steady and sharp, she's free now. And so am I. The storm outside was nothing compared to the storm that broke inside me as I realized, sometimes the deepest betrayal is the one that saves you. The rain lingered through the night, as if the sky itself refused to let go of its grief. When the door finally clicked shut behind Daniel, the house seemed to breathe for the first time in years, like it, too, had been holding secrets in its walls, suffocating under the weight of our lies and longing. I sat alone on the couch, an old blanket pulled around my shoulders, listening to the murmur of two men outside my door, one from my past, one from a future I knew could never be. Their voices rose and fell, fragments of blame, forgiveness, and quiet surrender. I didn't need to hear every word to understand, some goodbyes can't be spoken with lips alone. When Evan returned, his hair was soaked through, his shirt clinging to him like the last remnants of boyhood he'd shed in one brutal season of loss. He stood before me, eyes softer than they had any right to be, holding 2 mugs of tea, one for him, one for me, as if to remind us both that life could still have gentle moments. "Is he gone?" I asked, my voice a fragile thing in the hush. He nodded, lowering himself onto the couch beside me. "Yeah. He wanted you to come with him. I told him you weren't his to take anymore." A quiet laugh escaped me, tired, not unkind. "I was never really his, Evan. Just a part of myself I gave away because I didn't know how to keep it safe. He didn't touch me this time. He didn't need to. The closeness between us now was not forbidden, it was simply human. A tangle of shared loneliness, a fierce and tragic love, yes, but one we both knew had to fade for us to breathe again." "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "For what I wanted from you. For what I let us become." I brushed his hair back from his forehead the way I did when he was small. "No. Don't be sorry. We were broken people trying to feel whole. It doesn't make us monsters, it makes us honest. And we both survived it." Outside, dawn teased the horizon, pink and bruised like an old wound healing at last. When he stood to leave, I let him. "Some ties you must cut softly, like a whisper." He paused in the hallway, turning back one last time. "What now?" he asked. I managed a smile. "Now, we forgive ourselves. And we promise never to lose ourselves inside someone else's shadow again." I watched him disappear down the hall, a man who had once been my little boy, who would now learn to be a man without carrying my emptiness as his burden. As the first light of morning spilled into the living room, I knew this truth deep in my bones: sometimes betrayal isn't the sharpest wound. Sometimes it's staying silent when your soul begs you to be seen. To those watching this story, tell me, have you ever loved someone so fiercely it blurred right and wrong? Would you choose survival over loyalty? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to know what happened after this storm, if you want a sequel, let me know. Love, after all, never truly ends. It just changes shape.